Hi, Bishop.
Hi, how are you, Allyson?
I'm good. I'm so glad that we get an opportunity to sit in and discuss The Wall,
Yeah,
your new bestseller that's coming out.
bestseller.
And I think that there's a lot of questions that a lot of people have. I've been reading your social media, your Twitter, your Facebook.
Yeah.
People have questions about this whole journey of The Wall, and why wouldn't you call it The Door, something more of greater opportunity? So what is The Wall? Tell us.
Well, if it was the door, you'd be able to pass through it with ease. But it's the wall because it's something you run into. And I've heard the wall described and defined as many things. You know, a marathon runner would describe it as reaching the 20th mile and feel like someone dropped an elephant on your back. So people describe it as many things, midlife crisis. Most people would refer to the wall as a midlife crisis, and that's kind of, midlife crisis usually hits between 40, 45 years old.
But midlife crisis to me sounds almost a little too tidy, because you didn't really go through a midlife crisis. You went through a scandal. I mean, there are reports, people can look online, there's sex scandal, extramarital affair accusations.
Right.
That was all the impetus to this?
Yeah, and you know, you can call it a midlife crisis, though. And I want to clarify that, because you know, there's three ways we could look at this thing. We could focus our conversation totally on the wall experience. We could go postscript and say, this is how you recover from the wall, or we could say what led up to the wall. And when you look at it in that regards, I think there was propensities and tendencies that were in me that are not unfamiliar to most people.
You think or you know?
I think, you know, I mean, I can, if I count 10 men on my hand, 9 of them are gonna have some bend or propensity, and that one guy, I'm gonna give him the exemption because nothing's ever come out on him. So I'm gonna say 9 out of 10, but, and I think those propensities or tendencies, whatever you want to refer to them as, they demand attention at 40, 38, 44, and here's why.
So you're almost giving the illusion that they're there before. Oh yeah. But now they demand that you pay attention to them by a certain age.
They are there before as a brick in the wall. And you know, you are responsible for your own wall. You know, you will never hear me say, someone else built my wall. I built my wall one brick at a time, and I did it by not dealing with what we are referring to now as those bends and those tendencies. So when I say midlife crisis is crucial, it is in that regard, because as time goes on, I was married when I was 19. This is an interesting stat. Most divorces happen in the second year of marriage. What people don't know is the other year that most divorces happen is the 27th year of marriage. Isn't that interesting? And mine was the 27th year.
But why the 27th year?
Because when you get married and you're 19, you're 20, you have kids, now you're 40, and you're going, they're in high school, they're graduating high school, they're going on with their life, you empty nest. You know, even though we had adopted a child, my mind was gone, and I was like, you know what, I'm ready to start the second half of my life, and you're not included. And there's many reasons.
You made that decision inside.
Yeah, and it was tough, you know, I mean, it just didn't happen overnight, and I wouldn't say I made that decision, we made that decision. And I had buried myself in everything that I thought would bring satisfaction to me, from roping to preaching as much as I could possibly preach, to writing books, doing a music album, whatever it took to keep me occupied and irresponsible. That's what I partook in.
Well, I think that it's interesting that you talk about the wall being a place, if I understand you correctly, of irresponsibility.
Yeah.
And you have no idea any of the things I'm going to ask you, but one thing, when I looked at years ago, as you started talking about the wall, you said that Jesus had his own wall.
Yeah, and he did. I mean, the book of Hebrews will tell you that. The book of Hebrews says plainly that Jesus learned obedience not through his victories, but the things he suffered. And so I just have this firm belief that Jesus did not walk 33 years through life and not face, the Bible's very plain that he faced every temptation we have faced.
So you're combating a perfect Christ?
Well, I'm saying he had challenges, and it's obvious in the garden. If he was all spirit and all God with no flesh draped over him, then why would he pray, Father, take this cup from me? And he's sweating drops of blood trying to get out of the very will and the very purpose he was sent into the earth to accomplish. And that is the wall. You know, we can call it Gethsemane, the olive press, pressure, stress, whatever you want to call it, but he faced it. And I think at that moment, he was looking at humanity at a level he had never experienced it before. He's not only the Son of God, he's the Son of Man.
Now, how did the wall show up for you, though? Because everybody wants to know. I mean, those are the questions people are begging. And
I'll answer. You know, I even got a phone call, you know, a guy wanted to do another news report on me. Back in, you know, rewind this tape 6 years, and I'm saying, no way, you're not getting me. Now, ask any question you want to ask because...
Why? What's the distinction?
Because I'm over it. You know, it's a matter of seasoning and healing, you know, when you hit the wall like I hit it, you don't get over it in a week. You don't get over it in a year. It's going to take a minute. And that's why I was very quiet. I've been quiet on this subject other than with our church family for 7 years.
Well, and a lot of what you've said, even in privacy, has been leaked. It's been leaked online through audio recordings. And it's almost like people wanted to keep pushing you back into that wall experience. Describe to us what your wall was and how it showed up for you. Yeah,
well, and trust me, when I tell you, you always hear me say this, I'm not going to go through anything that I'm not going to learn. I'm a good student. And I've studied this thing from the emotional side, spiritual side, psychology. Let's take psychology. You asked me, how did I arrive at that place?
Well, I asked you what it was, how it showed up in your life. That's what I asked.
Okay, well, I'm gonna tell you because I think I know where you're going, and I'm just kind of yielding. I'm not stopping it, I'm just yielding it because I want to go there. I really do. But I want to show the psychological path of this thing because in the world of psychology, there's what is called the pyramid. If you turn the pyramid upside down, and now the point is on the bottom, there's what is called thought. When you get halfway up the pyramid, there's what is called feeling. Top of the pyramid, which is the flat part now, would be the biggest part of the pyramid is action. So we know what the Bible tells us when Paul wrote to the church at Corinth, take every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. I don't know what you're thinking. That's why it's the smallest part of the pyramid. And that's the interesting thing to me in all of this, is if you ever knew people's thoughts, I think it would shock all of us. But if you ever allow those thoughts to graduate to feelings, you're going to grade those feelings, good or bad, A or F. You're going to grade them. And if that feeling is satiating to you and it brings a sense of enjoyment, the likelihood of you acting on that feeling is very, very good, very strong. You're going to do it. And so I had this pyramid turned upside down, going thought, feeling, thought, feeling, thought, feeling. And eventually I started acting on what would bring me satisfaction.
Now, express to us what those were, because just in knowing you and knowing, seeing excerpts from the wall and hearing what you're putting out there, it seems like this book can touch everyone from the pulpit to the club.
Oh, yeah.
So, I
thank you for saying that, too, because we don't want this to come across as some super spiritual, and I'm not condescending to that at all. Or I don't want it to just be another Christian book, you know? And so, it is written through that paradigm. It is written through that perception and perspective. We have to reach from the pulpit to the club. Everyone. So anyone that reads this book is going to be challenged.
So what's that bounce? You talk about bounce from thought to feeling, but you're not naming it. And for those people that are looking to break free, they need a name.
Okay.
They need an association, a relatability.
Okay. Just let me say it like this. Money's never been a problem for me. Money's been, I don't know how that is, but it's just never been a problem. I guess it's because I don't care if I have it or not.
You mean when you have it's not a problem, when you don't, it's not a problem?
When I didn't have it, I didn't know I didn't have it. And when I have it, I don't know I have it either. Because I really don't change the way I live. Very, very little. You know, I mean, I've changed where I live, but not how I live. I changed what I drive, but I could drive anything. I bought a pickup truck just to drive a pickup truck. But that's not the point. The point is, I never had a problem with money.
So money and sex are the two greatest evils many people say that as humanity we face.
Back in the day, all the preachers used to say, what was it? The gold, the girls, and the glory. One of those are going to get you. And I never had a problem with giving God glory.
And you always reached your goals.
So money, gold was never my problem.
Okay.
Glory's never been, I've never been on an ego trip. Okay. Maybe control. Manipulation is a symptom of control. That was an issue, but that was all stemmed from the other one, you know, so I didn't have a problem with gold or glory. Maybe it was girls.
Okay.
To answer your question, yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
What were the consequences of that?
Big, huge. Loss of family, loss of, 600 people left my church in a week, in 7 days. We watched 600 people live. And I had the audacity to get the database from the office and try to call every one of them.
Why?
To explain. I wanted to explain to them what happened. It's not what you heard, because it was huge. The spectrum of what was portrayed was humongous. It was magnanimous. The actuality of what was happening was wrong, but it wasn't what people thought. Was I unfaithful? Absolutely. Did I mess up on my wife? Absolutely.
So I think it's interesting because you talk about the difference in perception and what was really going on in the midst of this scandal. What was the difference?
Let me answer it this way, Allyson. Yeah, I did wrong. But the bigger question to me is,
wrong is a big label.
Yeah, it is. And when I say wrong, I mean I was unfaithful to my wife. And again, I'll reiterate, not to the degree that it was being portrayed. However you want to measure that.
Okay.
I don't know if you measure that by the number of people or the degree of the insanity. It doesn't really matter. The point is, religion demanded consequence. The system said, you're going to pay.
The system of the church.
That's right. You're going to pay, and here's how you're going to pay. I'm going to walk out of your life. I'm going to punish you for what you've done, and I'm going to walk away from you. I heard one guy that went through something very similar to what I've gone through on an even larger scale, and he's actually a friend of mine. I saw him doing an interview, and he was talking about living in this huge house when he was at his the pinnacle of his success, and the guy next to him was a doctor, and he lived in a big house too. Well, the consequence I paid for my sin was I don't get to live like that anymore. That makes absolutely no sense to me. Where does that ever? This is interesting. When David sinned, and that's our hallmark guy for mess up in the Bible, right? Did he stop being king? Absolutely not. He never stopped being king. And the point is, everybody thinks, now is my opportunity to show my God side. I'm not staying with you because you made a mistake. Sooner or later, the church is going to have to wake up and realize we have to make room for leaders' humanity.
Did you always have that perspective?
Not to the degree I do now. You know, grace has a way of working in you over time, and my grace measure is a lot larger now
A lot larger.
than it's ever been, yeah.
So people were asking you this, though, in that moment. They were asking you, they were
Yeah.
begging you for answers, and you wouldn't give them.
No, I wouldn't even talk to the guy that, you know, popped out of the bushes at the church with the camera and microphone. I never responded to him. And people, here's the...
Do you regret not
No,
speaking
because
out
I
then?
remember the following Sunday standing up in my pulpit and reading a letter apologizing to everyone I ever offended, asking them publicly to please forgive me. That didn't suffice it, because religion, you can't pay religion back. It won't let you. You got to pay by loss. You got to pay by suffering. You know, and that's man's judgment. That's
What's
not
spirit?
God.
What is spirit then?
Well, let me finish this thought, and then well, spirit is forgiveness. Well, we can go. That's Newman. It's God. It's forgiveness. It's mercy. Mercy is always above judgment. The mercy seat was above the law that was in the ark, and mercy's always supreme, and His mercy's new every morning. So the question you ask is, why didn't I answer those questions then? And I'm gonna be very honest with you. I was mad. You know, I went from hurt to anger, you know, and that's kind of the progression
Right.
of healing.
Right.
Well, my hurt to anger happened really quick, really quick. And the reason it did is the people that pulled my cover, I had my hand on the corner of all their sheets. You understand what I mean? I'm the pastor. The pastor knows everything about everybody. And if I would have responded to the questions then, there would have been a whole lot more people exposed other than just Rick Hawkins.
So
Not
there would have
only-
been an implosion. So you, in many ways, you took the hit. You fell on the sword.
Oh yeah, exactly. I was not going to do to everyone else what they did to me. And I still haven't, I never will. But remember, when David went in that cave and Saul, he could have killed Saul, but he just cut the little corner of his robe off and left just to let him know he was there, but he never touched. He said, who am I to touch God's anointed? And that's me. Let me tell you something, the calling and gifting of God is irrevocable. If it's irrevocable, then it's irrefutable. And for us to leave it is irresponsible. I could never leave my call and my gift just because you got mad at my mistake. That's ridiculous. And so during the midst of the storm, I was being fired questions left and right. And I was consumed in reading blogs about me, hundreds a day. But I would not respond, because if I would have responded, I would have done more damage than I would have good at that time. Now I can do good, I can help, because I'm healed.
What I don't want people to say is that's his story. Because even though I've never had a husband and I've never cheated on my husband, I too can hit the wall. And you talk about that. You talk
absolutely.
about it's an experience. Is it isolated to men who, is the wall isolated to men who have extramarital affairs, or is it bigger than that?
No. The wall,
Because how can someone who's looking
Right.
say that book is for me?
I'm going to tell you right now, the approach to the wall comes fourfold effect. And you can call it a generational cycle, generational curse, or you can make it very practical and start with the thought of preoccupation, which is entertainment. What do you entertain yourself with? And is that entertainment detrimental or beneficial to your purpose? And that, well, I'm going to always go back to, and that's, you know, I could just elaborate here just for a moment. Let me take this tangent. Purpose is everything to me. You know, I'm big on purpose. Purpose is what saves us. Purpose is the why of life. So I'm not that guy that points the finger about sin. Sin is missing the mark. The mark is purpose. I firmly believe that. So I'm not, you know, the details of how many women you slept with, or who was it and what was her name, why is that necessary to know? Because the main thing here is it took me out of who I am. It took me into an identity crisis because I lost a sense of purpose. So preoccupation.
So what I hear you say is, what's the thing that takes you away from the core of your identity?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that you're going to find that in the middle of this book. You know, and identity is where everything on the inside of you matches everything on the outside of you, which is ultimate integrity. And when
so here's what I love about what you're saying, because, you know, Bishop Carlton Pearson used to always say, it's not about the enemy, it's about the inner me.
Yeah.
So do I hear you say that the wall is about what rises up out of you?
Absolutely.
That distracts you. And so that could be a cycle of poverty. That could be overeating. That could
Absolutely.
be anger, rebellion.
There's a section in the book called Manufacturer Errors. And it basically has to do with how everything in your life brings you to the summation of who you are. Every event, every experience, every relationship, every influence, your parents, your lack of parents, all of those things bring to you an ultimate identity. And I would say with me, you know, the preoccupation is a danger. What you entertain yourself with is that can be very dangerous. For me, it was pretty obvious what that was. But then it moves up to ritualization, which is the routine of entertaining yourself. And then it moves beyond ritualization to compulsive behavior. Now I'm not only have a routine of entertaining myself with it, now I'm partaking in it and it's becoming a behavior pattern in my life. The final stage is despair. So now you feel guilty, shame, toxic shame, depressed. And so what is the answer?
Well,
to go back to the preoccupation.
How do you recover?
You go, well, if you don't break this cycle of going back to the preoccupation, which brings that sense of satisfying that intrigue or the living on the edge or the unveiling of something you don't want nobody to see, and the secret is, you know, you're involved in all this mystery, which brings a lot of satiation to people too who operate in forms of manipulative behaviors.
People like you, like
Absolutely.
where you are.
That's exactly where I was.
Are you still there?
Oh, no. Absolutely not. But I've come to a place of wholeness, and wholeness is living a balanced life. Allyson, this is my point. You know, we taught people for decades to celebrate your spirituality. We forgot to tell them you're human. So what I said, okay, if I've got a human problem, then I am going to come to a place within Rick Hawkins that I say, this is humanity. Deal with it. You know, you're not sick. You're not crazy. You're not a bad person. This is humanity, and if you don't handle it right, your humanity is going to be detrimental to your destiny. And detours are never pleasant. They bumpy, and they take a long time.
But they come to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're being so open and so transparent, and that takes such a measure of confidence. How did you gain the confidence? When did you pick that up? Because you talk about being in that dark season, and at what point did you begin to transcend, and how can people be like you in that? Well,
the one thing that was told to me early on, an advisor told me, he said, Rick, be consistent in your purpose. Whatever you have to do, and I can remember those days where my guys, when I say my guys, my spiritual sons and my own biological son, would come to my ranch on Sunday morning, and I'd take Ambien to go to sleep. And then I'd take some kind of a speed pill to wake up. And that's how I lived.
Would you drink it with water? Would you?
I drank. During that time, anything that I could consume that would make me feel better, I would.
You were numbing.
Yeah, I was numbing the pain, absolutely. So in that season, you know, to find me with a glass of whiskey, I remember a story when Pastor Dick Burnell showed up in my house at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd never met this man. I'm in my underwear in a rocking chair on my front porch with a cup of coffee on this side and a glass of Jack Daniels on this side. But I was bulldog determined through all of that to realize this is only symptoms of the pain I'm dealing with.
Yes.
But I wasn't killing myself over it. I was already dead. I was a walking dead man. So I just decided to stay consistent in my purpose. And I was not going to recant or remove myself from my purpose in the earth.
So the person that's walking through that season now, and it may not be whiskey, it may not be Ambien, but they're using something to numb.
Right.
What would you say to them about how they can recover?
Well, first of all, I would say to them, be careful of what is numbing your pain, because addictions are very, very powerful. And thank God that never happened to me. I never became an addict. past what ran me into my wall, which we've already discussed. So I would say, be consistent. Go to counseling. Counseling helps. Get advisors around you, people you respect.
So you're saying it's not just one altar call and you're done?
Oh no, it's not. That's not going to happen. And that's why I really thank God for people that did come into my life from the entertainment industry, totally secular, to these pioneers of the faith, totally Christian. And the key is finding people that still believe in you no matter what you went through. No matter what's going on in your life, somebody believes in you. And I was looking like crazy for someone, please believe in me.
You needed to borrow that faith.
Oh,
who did you borrow from?
Dick Burnell was key. My pastors, I'll get emotional, but 7 years, 8.5 years now, my pastor. And he still does. He calls me every day. This is 8 years later. He still calls me or texts me every day. How's my man doing? He just likes me.
Do you feel like you give him a return on that investment?
I try because I do believe in the power of honor. And that's another thing. My sons, spiritual sons that are really close to me, and my son, they always brought me back to my identity. Remember when Joseph sent the wagons to Jacob, and when Jacob was still in Israel and looking for his son, and of course Joseph was already in prominence, and he met his brothers, and Jacob didn't believe them that Joseph was alive. So Joseph said, send wagons to my dad. And the Bible says this very interesting. Jacob saw the wagons from Joseph, and Israel said, same guy, but Israel's his prophetic identity, right? It's his purpose in the earth. But that honor made him come back to who he really is in God. And these guys always, they never dishonored me. And they saw me in my worst day, but they didn't dishonor me. They always brought me honor. They spoke to me out of what they knew in the anointing in the pulpit, and and so it would always bring me back to that.
They spoke to your greatness even when you were in your darkness.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Are there still days like that where you go into that shadowed place?
I don't want to say regret. How shall I say remorse? Yeah, remorse. Forever I lived in regret. The next word after regret in your dictionary is regroup. And sooner or later I had to regroup. But there are days of remorse where I miss my family. Holidays are hard. Those, what you would call family times, difficult. I do not really look forward to Christmas, I do for my grandkids, but I also think, what if our family was together? Those thoughts, they'll never leave me. I just learned how to cope and deal with those. And so yeah, in that regard, it's tough.
So on the other side of the wall, what is life like for you now?
Great. Ezekiel said I now sit where they sat. There's some people you can never speak to until you've sat in their seat. And the fact is... You
mean other fallen ministers?
For example...
Can we use the word fallen?
Yeah, you can use that. But for example, when I stand in our pulpit right here, 60% of our church is divorced. That's not unique to Place for Life. That's in every church in America. 50 to 60% of the people preachers are preaching to are divorced people. Well, I've been divorced now, and I'm still not married. Don't know if I'll ever get married again. But I understand now the pain those people have gone through because of their divorce. Divorce in itself is an amazing agony. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I'm doing great. And I mean that sincerely. I am doing good.
Well, it seems like you have embraced some new level of freedom.
Yeah.
And how can people through this book, though, because they're going to hear your story, your journey, and they're going to relate it to them, how do they find their freedom? Embracing life, embracing every event, embracing every experience. Don't act like it didn't happen to you. That's my problem with Christianity. What chapter of the book will speak to that?
recovery, the chapter on recovery, understanding recovery. It will speak loud to that. This book is crazy. I'm telling you, it's raw.
And who should they buy it for themselves? Should they give it away? Who would they give it
Both.
to? Like,
I would
who
say,
is it for?
yes, if you haven't hit the wall, you will. You know, and everybody's wall is not the same height, same thickness. But it'll reach everyone. But you know, for that wife that is living with a guy that is acting a little crazy right now, you might want to just buy it for him and slip it over by where he drinks his coffee, and it'll help him. I promise you, it'll help him.
It'll help him. How?
He's not going to be able to get by the reality of the book. The book is real. It's not filled with cliches and typical, and I keep referring to this word, and I don't want to condescend to the word, but it's not filled with Christian terminology. You know, scripture's in there.
So you're saying it's non-religious, but it's
non-religious.
full of spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. The story I just told you about the whiskey, you know, in one hand. I mean, it's in the book. So in that regards, a man's man is going to look at that and go, wow, this dude is not trying to skirt the issue. He's not trying to hide this thing.
And what about women? What will we experience?
Same. I don't think women and men differ in that, you know, even though I am a man, of course, and there's kind of that slant. But the book, we made sure the book was written for men and women. It's not a man's book. This is a person's book. Especially people that deal with high passions, you know, high energy, and people that are entrepreneurs, successful people, they will really identify with this book very strongly.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Paul Coelho wrote something really interesting. He said, when you find your path, you must not be afraid. You need to have sufficient courage to make mistakes. Disappointment, defeat, and despair are all the tools God uses to show us the way.
Wow. We should have put that in my book, because if that's the summation of the book. You know, we err when we think that leaders do not face the propensities and the possibilities of probabilities of making mistakes and falling. I said it like this: I really didn't learn as much from my victories as I did from my losses. I learned a lot in failure. I grew a lot through my losses. There are people today that I wish I could sit down and talk to them that will never speak to me again, and that's understandable, and I miss them. But if there's ever been a time that I would say, you should sit under my ministry, it's now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I just admire and respect you for allowing me to come with my questions that you didn't look at and didn't know what I would say.
I did not want to hear. I just wanted to answer it as, you know, as vulnerable and transparent as I could, and I appreciate you taking time. You're great at this.
Yeah.
So thank
well, I
you.
think you're an incredible leader to leaders. I'm excited because I believe that this will inspire more leaders to be transparent and real with the journey that they've walked through to help humanity. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Allyson.